Well, I've successfully arrived in New York City. The family and I arrived just yesterday afternoon, and here we are. And it's so funny, and I talk about this all the time. It's like I come from a radio background, and doing radio for so many years, it's like to try to do anything remotely, it was such a huge, huge deal. Like it was massive. You'd have to arrive early, and this is how far back it was. To get all your information and music logs, you'd have to find a fax machine, and then you'd have to find an ISDN line, and then you'd have to have all this broadcast equipment that came in big, heavy silver crates. What do you do now? Find a conference room, my remote gear, a laptop, and an internet connection. Let's go. And don't forget, to test it out, I did this live stream from the woods once. Let's not forget that to prove we could do it. So, well, here we are. Thanks for finding Wicked Radio. Appreciate you so much. I got some New York stories for you, as well as some headlines coming up. It wasn't just me coming to New York City yesterday. Tom Homan brought his ICE team to Albany, the capital of New York, yesterday, and that brought us a new character in the ICE protest game. Wait till you hear about this guy. And he also happens to be running for mayor of New York City. It's quite a treat. And we also have this one to talk about. You knew it was going to come to this. We had a trans tussle over pronouns and how to properly address a trans congressperson in the halls of Congress in a breakout session. It actually happened, and there was yelling and screaming, arguing, and banging of a gavel. It was amazing. We got that to cover as well. But my favorite story of the day, not really favorite, it's just the one I'm most fascinated by. We've talked about him a little. The slow progression of what the hell happened to comedian Bill Burr, who used to be, and it really wasn't that long ago, when Bill Burr first started out, Boston comedian, might have been like the most anti-woke personality I've ever heard in my life. He's the exact opposite of now, and some of the stuff he's saying. Now, like everything else with Elon derangement syndrome, Elon is the target of most of his ire now in his comments. But the stuff he's saying is so off base, it's just insane. But we'll talk about him as well. But let's get rid of some details first. Thanks for finding Wicked Radio. Appreciate you. Live stream, even on the road, every single day right here about 8 a.m. Eastern time on X mostly, and then on Facebook and on YouTube, and the audio podcast. This will be interesting today. It should be fine, but it should post just about 9 a.m. Eastern time, where it usually does, wherever you prefer to get your podcast. So that'll be coming up as well. All right, let's get to it. Got some New York stories for you. So we had talked about this a couple of months ago when the fights were happening over it, and then they instituted it right here in New York City. Other cities as well, but obviously things happening in New York, it's going to get most of the attention. Congestion pricing. Here's what it is. And if you live out of New York, you're not really familiar with the term, and I had to look up really what they were trying to do as well. Anybody that lives here or coming into the city, you get charged for the amount of time you're driving, like literally by the time and distance. And they do it by the license plate. And they pick up the license plate, and they charge you for a certain amount of time because it can track where you're going. So the natural result of that is people try to cover the license plates. Like they have the little plastic thing that comes up over it. Or this is happening too, and you see signs all over the place coming out of the airport. And we're coming out of LaGuardia yesterday. Illegal plate or fraudulent plate, maximum fine. So people are buying plates that don't really exist to cover it so they don't get charged, blah, 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 whatever. So that's all happening, and you're aware of it, and the signs are everywhere, right? So we're on the Triborough Bridge coming out of the airport into Manhattan, and the bridge is now called the RFK Bridge, ironically enough, after Bobby Kennedy, Sr., that is. And we're in the taxi cab, the family and I, and we come across this slowdown, and the driver, now I'm in the front seat, everybody else is in the back. The driver goes, oh boy, checkpoint. My mind, first of all, went to, wow, I wonder if this is like an ICE checkpoint. I wonder if they're like stopping to see if like there's any illegal immigration. And I just kind of stayed silent. And we come up on it. This is the middle of the bridge. This is both directions, complete standstill. And there were cars, and the cab driver starts telling the story. He goes, boy, you just missed it, though. If you had arrived, if you'd gotten into this cab maybe 10 minutes later, you'd be backed up probably 45 minutes. I said, really? Is that right? Is it that bad? He goes, oh, yeah. Then he starts telling me the story about the congestion pricing, the fight that went into it, and people trying to get out of it, including cab drivers like himself, and what they're doing now to do it. Now, I'm looking at this. And I said, checkpoint like every day. He goes, oh, yeah, different parts of the bridge, all over the city. Checkpoints to try to nab people with big fines if you have illegal plates or you're trying to get out of the congestion pricing. He says this. Now I'm looking at it and I see on our side just ahead, there were 4 cop cars. There were about 10 cops. I look at the other side, there were 2 tow trucks, same amount of cops and cop cars. And I said to him, now with this amount of manpower, I can imagine every day what they're putting into it. Doesn't that kind of like offset the price of what they're trying to save here with congestion? He goes, oh yeah. And then he tells me the story, and this is a cab. I said to him, this is going to be kind of tough on you guys, right? This is a cab driver. His livelihood. They own, the licenses to have this. That's their personal business. And it was a great guy. And he told me the story about what went into it. And the citizens of this city, cab drivers, delivery people, everybody that tried to fight this for it was going on like a year and a half. He said, I went to city commission meetings myself, told them my story, and I told them that the subway's no safer, and I've had a gun pulled on me. Oh, he's telling me the whole story. But this is the part he said. He goes, but they didn't care, nothing. Like it was all for naught. They had decided this like a year ago that this was going to happen. But then he said something really interesting, and this is where I agreed with him, especially. He said, but it's amazing with all the things in this city. As a cab driver, you want to know what's going on in any particular area, listen to cab driver, talk to them, or delivery people that are in contact with a lot of people in this city. He said, it's the most unifying issue I've ever seen in my life. Everybody is against it except the politicians. And I thought, that's amazing. That's true. Maybe it comes to something like this in a city this massive to unify people and bring them together. And that's exactly what he said. He doesn't think it's going away. My thought is, you know what? If that many people are against it, it's something's got to give. Because I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. And if you live out of a big city like that, like I do, back home in Florida, we don't deal with this, or other states or southern states or out west. But they're looking at it, Chicago, LA, Philly, Boston, they're all looking at congestion pricing to see how it's going and how much backlash they're getting. So the backlash that's happening right here, it's really important to make sure we don't have to deal with this. But there we are. That's my New York story so far. So far, we've just gotten here. It wasn't just me coming to New York yesterday. You know who else did? Tom Homan, director of ICE. Didn't come to the city, but he went to Albany, the capital of New York. I guess he was trying to explain exactly what was happening and the efforts. He wanted to talk to congresspeople. He was there with a big team. Well, out of this meeting, we got a new character. We got a new guy to talk about. You ready for this? His name is Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani. You're going to get to know him a lot because he's loud, and he's running for mayor of this city, New York. He's a congressperson. He's an assemblyman from, I think it's like the Queens area. So now that Tom Homan from ICE was there, Zohran Mamdani used that as a chance to grandstand before all the cameras and all of these protesters that were in that building at the Capitol building in New York. And this is not just a Northeast story. This is a national story. And the way Tom Homan responded to it was pretty amazing. But get to know, and there's a lot of people involved in this, Zohran Mamdani leading the protests against ICE. This is some of the stuff he was yelling at Tom Homan. And then he explains why he did it. And he had a little press conference after the fact.
You believe in the First Amendment, Tom Homan? When we asked Tom Homan, all he had to answer for that cruelty was a smirk. Because there is no answer for taking a man from his pregnant wife, who is due to deliver their newborn child.
All right. Again, that guy there is Zohran Mamdani. He's gonna make a lot of noise. He's gonna run for mayor of New York. His big thing now is gonna be immigration, but not just what he's claiming to be taking people without any civil liberties, taking them out of their homes and separating children, and doesn't mention the illegal criminals and the criminal activity and all the stuff that Tom Homan's focusing on. Didn't talk about that. But he talked about a certain person taking a man from his pregnant wife. You know who he was talking about? This is where it involves another character. It's pronounced Mahmoud Khalil. Heard that name? This is the guy that ICE is trying to deport. Who's Mahmoud Khalil that Zohran mentioned right there? He's the organizer of all the Columbia University protests. You might remember those. Remember not too long ago, right? Where they kept Jewish kids from entering classrooms. This was over the war in Israel and Gaza and what's happening here, which very quickly, let's not forget this. Zohran also didn't mention this one, which very quickly turned into pro-Hamas rallies, which you still see a lot around here and some other cities across the country. That's who he's talking about. Interestingly enough, though, Zohran didn't talk about the criminal activity. They didn't talk about the criminals that they're taking out of jails right here, organized criminal activity and gang leaders that they have in jail throughout state of New York, because that's where he's from, but also happening throughout the country. Didn't talk about that. This character, Zoran, who's running for mayor of this city, you're going to hear from that guy a lot pretty soon. He's going to make a lot of noise, and he certainly did yesterday, literally and figuratively. Now, Tom Homan, director of Vice, he was there. He was talking to some assemblymen. He was talking to congressmen. He was talking to the governor of New York. This is a guy, now you understand it. Now I understand it. The way he handled it yesterday, first of all, he's got the experience from working on the border, right? But this is a guy, you know that expression, DGAF, don't give a you know what? Yeah, this guy was the definition of it. So at some point, he had to walk past twice the protesters and this Zoran guy that was yelling things like that at him. Didn't give a you know what, but he also was, by design, I think he was chewing on an apple at the time, like looking at all of them, like straight in the face and walking as slow as he possibly could until he got a chance to do his press conference. I think that's a big reason why, besides experience, why Trump picked that guy to do it. Because I don't think he's a guy you pick a fight with. I really don't. He really doesn't give a you know what. He's gonna stay true to his mission, whether we agree with it, whether you agree with it, whether they agree with it or not. That's not a guy that's gonna back down of deporting illegal criminals into this country. And then he had his press conference. So Tom Homan got a chance to answer reporters, and they were throwing everything at him while the protesters were still in the background. And they asked him about the separation of families issue, and he had a pretty smart answer to this. This is what Tom Homan said.
We want to talk about family separation? 500,000 children on Joe Biden were trafficked into this country. They can't find 300,000 of them. That's a separation.
Pretty good answer. I mean, whether or not you agree with it. And there were no follow-up answers. That's how you know it's a good answer to a question, when these politicians or leaders or people like Tom Homan, do a press conference. When there's no follow-up question to the issue he was just talking about, that's when you know you answered it pretty well. So, but again, the takeaway on this, Zoran Mandani running for New York mayor, you're going to hear a lot about that guy here pretty soon. So get to know him, I guess. I don't know. But listen to what he didn't talk about, because that'll tell you the whole story. Well, you know what's going to come to this? This also happened. It won't be all politics here. We'll get to the Bill Burr story here in just a little bit. We have I'm calling it the transgender tussle of 2025. You know it was going to come to this. Yeah, at some point, it's not just in business, where HR departments were trying to figure out what to do with the transgender issue. We went through the pronouns and all the woke stuff, and then coming off the woke stuff, you knew it was going to reach the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C. at some point in time. And this is right about in time. So now we have this. You thought the previous story with all these characters was confusing. Where do you hear this one? We got 3 involved in this. The first one is one you may have heard of, maybe not. Representative Sarah McBride, congressperson from the state of Delaware. Now, Sarah didn't come into the world as Sarah. Sarah was Tim McBride. Yeah. So made some history, after November, and made a lot of headlines. The first trans person to be elected to Congress, openly. It makes no bones about that was born biologically male, no big deal. Isn't, but is a Democrat. You might imagine that. So is also in a panel and a subcommittee, right? In the panel and subcommittee, we have 2 other characters. Another representative, Keith Self, he's from Texas. And another one, Bill Keating, he's from Massachusetts. Now, when it comes to the transgender issue, and you've got trans members of Congress now, which isn't going to stop, this is just the first one. How do you think it's going to break down between Texas and Massachusetts? Yeah, Texas on the right, my right, your left, and Massachusetts on the far left. How do you think those representatives are going to handle the issue? I think it's a case where everybody's wrong, like all of them. Not even the least important character in this entire story is Sarah McBride, the trans congressperson, because it came down to a fight, the transgender tussle between Keith Self, Massachusetts, and Bill Keating from Texas, and how you address congressperson Sarah McBride. See where I'm going with this? So this is what Keith Self from Texas did. obviously to make a statement, to start a fight, right? But to continue the fight, Bill Self from Massachusetts pushed back on it. Representative Self from Texas called Sarah McBride sir and him and the man, male gender pronouns. Well, Bill Keating from Massachusetts was all up in arms over that, and he wasn't having it. And that's, my friends, what led to the transgender tussle in Congress.
Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I mean, I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this.
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
And the gavel banged. I can't. I've listened to this and I've seen that video probably like 10 times and try to figure out exactly. Is anybody in the right? I mean, honestly, Keith Self from Texas, obviously. Now, you may agree with the issue and exactly where he's going with this. He's ridiculous. I'm going to call him by his biological birthright. All right, you may agree with that. That's fine. But, okay, there's no argument. He's trying to make an issue of it, right? He's starting the fight. I mean, we know that's obvious, right? But also, who's continuing the fight? The guy from Massachusetts, Bill Keating, is. No doubt about it. And you know who's continuing the fight anymore and actually benefiting from it? Congressperson Sarah McBride. Because, she posts out yesterday, no matter how I'm treated by some colleagues, nothing diminishes my awe and gratitude in getting to represent Delaware in Congress, and I'll do my best. Well, this is becoming your defining characteristic. How is that serving your people in Congress? I think we've actually, with the transgender tussle in Congress, I think we've actually found a situation where no one is right, honestly. But you knew it was come to this. You just knew it would, because that's where we are right now. She's not going to be the first one, not going to be the first trans member of Congress elected. What's going to happen when the Republicans have some? That's going to be awesome. See, I'm in it for the entertainment value. All of this is so insane, and as a society, we haven't figured out any of it yet. So I just love the entertainment aspect of it. All right, we got some celebrity news to talk about, but is it celebrity news, or is it a mental health issue? Is it a conspiracy theory where a lot of people have said that a lot of these entertainers that we know and love and grew up with are compromised? Is that it? Did somebody get to them? Are they blacklisted unless they say certain things and talk about certain things? Maybe all of this is true. Or just maybe this is one giant marketing ploy. Or there's something going on in his personal life. I don't know. Who are we talking about? Talking about comedian Bill Burr. Now, Bill Burr's background, Boston-based comedian, made it big. He's got some Netflix specials. I think Showtime specials as well. What's interesting about this is Bill Burr came on the scene as probably the least woke comedian entertainer you could ever find, right? Didn't care. Would take shots at everybody and anybody and wasn't offended by anything. He would make fun of people who were actually offended by anything, right? Well, now and I found this, I didn't know he was doing this. So it's Bill Burr's, I think it's the Monday Morning podcast, which is where the audio is from that you're going to hear right here. He gets into a lot of heavy stuff. I swear, like more politics and more issues than I do, that's for sure. Not putting myself in that category, but still, it's interesting when you hear a comedian get that heavy into stuff, and he really does. He'll talk about sports and stuff and some lighter stuff, but he's pretty heavily involved now. But what he said now, he first made the scene, and we talked about this probably a month and a half ago. He's been, every single interview he does, every single video he does, he'll end it or he'll fit in as often as he can. Free Luigi. Luigi being the guy that shot the United Healthcare CEO right here down the street in New York City, shot him in the back. Bill Burr made some headlines for saying, it's a good thing that he did it. Free Luigi. He fits that in every single interview he does. Every single one of them. You'll hear it. But now he's got a new target. His target is Elon. This has been like the theme of every single pod we've done this week. Elon derangement syndrome is a thing. It's like everybody, I think they can't get to Trump, but they're targeting everything they possibly can on Elon. It's been the Tesla dealerships, taking on the Tesla stock, him personally, all that stuff. This is so unhinged and so unlike Bill Burr that it actually kind of took me back a little bit. I was like kind of shocked by this. Bill Burr on this Monday morning podcast he does, talking about, and this is finally making the rounds now, talking about Elon. I tried to get all the F-bombs out of here I possibly could. I think I got them all. But this is what he said.
Just like Hitler, a baby. How about the fact that the Twitter guy he's not even from here. He's from South Africa. He comes to this country and wants to turn it into a fucking dictatorship. He doesn't feel that we deserve democracy. Can you imagine?
Where did that come from? First of all, that's taking one of his. That's taking a shot at Elon being from South. He's an American resident, by the way, but you don't like that he came from South America and made a life here and built a business here and made such an impact here. Bill, are you against immigrants? Is that what you're saying here? That's what somebody should say to push back on him. But also, he made that statement immediately after talking about the Elon thing. Remember a couple of weeks ago? Remember he was waving to the crowd like this, and they said it was a Nazi salute? Just so what? No Republicans or conservatives can raise their arm above their waist. It's going to be called a Nazi salute, really? Like, people still believe that? So that's coming off of that. And then says it's a dictatorship. Like, and he was really, and it went on for a while. I don't have the space to actually talk about the entire thing, what he said. This is like a different human being. Like, I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, because now it's starting to, like, get a lot of traction. Bill Burr of, like, 10 years ago would have hated Bill Burr now. It's like a completely different person. It really is. Like, he never used to get involved with this stuff. And he would actually take shots at anybody that actually disagreed with him. But to focus all your energy like on Elon and Free Luigi and all this stuff, it begs the question. There's two possibilities here. I don't know. Maybe he's just had a change of heart. Who he's married to, what his life is like, being in Hollywood that long. I don't know. Here's the conspiracy theory I mentioned there. I'm not discounting it. A lot of people have said for years that Hollywood celebrities, as we know them, say a lot of the stuff they do, write a lot of the stuff they do, and get behind causes because they have to, because they want to keep working. I've had this happen twice to me, where I've talked off the record to some pretty well-known people who have told me, they don't even know each other, completely off the record, where they said, Hollywood is not nearly as left-wing crazy as you think, but they're scared to death of not projecting that. That makes sense to me. So maybe somebody got to Bill Burr, right? Maybe he's been compromised. They got some dirt on him. Who knows? So they're making him say this kind of stuff. But you listen to the passion he puts into that statement there as he's taking shots at Elon. It doesn't really seem to be that way. Here's the other possibility. Maybe it's just a giant marketing ploy. Could be, right? Because you've noticed this, you've felt it, you've seen it. Most celebrities are actually going the other way. They're not so afraid of the woke stuff anymore. Cancellations are down. Less people are being canceled. There's more free speech now. So most celebrities, especially comedians, boy, you see it in comedy. People aren't afraid to be insulting anymore. You see that a lot more. Maybe Bill Burr sees an opening here, a marketing opportunity to go the other way. Or he's felt this way the whole way. I don't know. I'm just telling you, this is a completely different guy. But bottom line is, it's a bottom line business, right? It's working for him. Everybody's talking about Bill Burr. This thing was recorded, I think, on Monday, made the rounds this week. We're on Thursday, and he's trending. Maybe it's marketing. Maybe he's compromised. Maybe he's had a change of heart. I don't know, but go back and listen or watch some of the Bill Burr specials from 10 years ago. That's a completely different human being. I don't know. We'll see. All right, thanks for finding me. I appreciate it. I'm out of material, and I got to get out of this conference room. Other people need to get in here. If everything is with me, including the algorithm and the wind in this conference room, we'll be live from New York again tomorrow. Live from Newark, Nueva York. Not Saturday Night Live, my little pod. So we'll live stream again tomorrow and see what's going on. We'll kind of prep going into, because St. Patty's Day is coming up on Monday. But come on, everybody you know, all the restaurants, all the bars, boy, especially around here, they're all prepping for St. Patty's Day. This is St. Patty's Day weekend. It is going to be wild. We'll talk about that, as well as whatever the heck is going on with these insane people in the news. There's never a shortage of information from that. So we'll talk about it as well. Thanks for finding me. And the audio podcast, too. I'll post that as soon as I get done out of here, and hopefully that works just as well as it does back home on your favorite podcast platforms. With all that said, don't take any crap from anybody, and we'll talk to you later.